Hi, I'm Larry Price. I'm one of the proud owners of Feathers Distillery, headquartered right here in Boise, Idaho, and we welcome you. Greatest thing about Idaho, one of the greatest things, is that from a manufacturing standpoint, it is perfect for whiskeys and bourbons because we have an arid climate. So there's that ebb and flow between temperature swings. I mean, even today it could swing 20 degrees. And these barrels are wood barrels, so it's an imperfect science, but every time it heats up, it expands. Every time it gets cold, it contracts. And that basically does two things. Number one, it actually circulates the spirit into the wood and pushes the flavor back from the wood back into the spirit. So we do lose some, and it's called angel share, kind of a sexy name for evaporation. But the cool thing about it is, when we lose it, the proof goes higher because it gets more concentrated. I know this is all new, old hat for you. And then when we proof it back, we get our yield back. So, and we want to see the ebb and flow. In fact, you'll see some of the barrels are weeping, which is a sexier name for cracking, and that means that the wood is actually cracking just a little bit, and then you get the weeping from it. We get our barrels from Louisville, Kentucky. We used to get them from Missouri, but then they got a little inconsistent. Louisville does a great job of toasting, charring, and there's either an uncharred barrel or a charred barrel. But even the uncharred barrel has some sort of toasting in it, and you'll see that in our products. We age everything we do. But the toasted ones, and then we have a char number 4 typically, and that's more of a Elijah Craig Maker's Mark type of toast. And we like that because we like the rich and the boldness from that. And the barrels are 53-gallon barrels, and it's a standard age-old size. And we get about 300 bottles of 750 milliliter 80 proof out of here, out of each 53-gallon barrels. Now, a lot of people have tried to cheat time, and it's legal. You could take smaller barrels to increase or decrease the time to do it. Of course, you get less yield. At 8 Feathers, we're very old school. We don't touch these things. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have a temperature-controlled room. We want the ebb and flow, and we just let them sit here. And in fact, we never bring a barrel out until we get an order. So it's just-in-time bottling, which we do ourselves, which we'll go over in a minute. And the reason we do that is because, unlike wine, spirits, brown water, only ages in the barrel, not the bottle. So we keep it in the barrel as long as possible, because that just makes sense. Now, the only thing, we do have finished inventory in our contract store for people to purchase, so we've already bottled that. Yeah, they sit here. Obviously, bunghole has to be up because there is pressurization in here. And if you had it sideways or down, you would lose a whole lot more product than we want. But we just stack them legally. This is as high as you can go in the state of Idaho.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Why is that?
Because they
safety.
Okay. Safety and pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, and then of course you have to have proper ventilation and fire prep.
You don't have to rotate.
No, we don't. In fact, you really don't even want to mess with them. They literally sit here and it's just time. We don't even sample for at least a year, and now we've stopped even sampling because we have a consistent batch now, inventory right. So we have 173 barrels aging right now, anywhere from end of last year to 4+ years. So now we kind of know what's going on. You'll notice in the distillery, when we go to the tasting room, anything with a black egg is called distillery exclusive. And that means when the distillers go to bottle, they usually take 2 barrels of the same product and blend, only 2. But if one tastes so magnificent or it's special or different, we push it to the side and we only make 1 batch. And we call it something cool. Special. And it's called a distillery exclusive. And a couple of our products are like that in there. So. And some of them we do single barrel proof, which means we don't even add water to proof at the end. Right, we don't cut it. So some of our products have 116 and 124 proof, but they're remarkably smooth, we think. You'll be able to tell us. So Louisville, Kentucky, 53 gallons. We also get all of our grains from Idaho. The only thing that leaves the state is our barley. It gets malted in Canada and comes back, but we like to support the family. Behind you are those totes, and when we're in production mode, we take the spent grains after we do our beer strip, and I'll explain that in a minute. And those spent grains still have a little bit of alcohol in it, and instead of selling it, we just give it back to the farmers for free as a way of saying thank you for growing the grains. And then they feed it to their cows and pigs, and it's kind of like their version of Kobe or Wagyu. we just weigh it right here, we put it in buckets in its organic form, so whole kernels of the 3 ingredients, We built this hopper as a big basic carrying area, and it has that slinky up there, up top there. It's a reverse auger. So basically what it does, we hit a motor, it takes the corn, wheat, and barley up through this PVC pipe into our grain mill. And this is a hammer mill grain mill. We tried a rotating one, and it just didn't work as well as the hammer one. And basically, it takes the corn, wheat, and barley, and it gets it into this consistency. And the reason we want to get to this consistency, like a cake mix, is that we can get to the starches a lot easier powder than it is to the whole grains. And that speeds up the cooking time. So the husk and everything are ground up into this. So then when it accumulates at the bottom, we hit another motor. Watch your step over here. This is called our mash tun. So literally, that powder that you saw goes right into the mash tun. It's our big crock pot, if you will. We get it up to about 200 degrees. We add water from the city because where you're standing, there's an artesian well. There's only 7 of them in the state. This is number 4. And the reason I mention that is, that's why we picked this location as well. It has very little iron in the water here. So we literally can take the water from the city and don't have to add much chemicals at all. If it had higher the iron content, the more chemicals you have to add. And as you can imagine, we use a lot of water in our production. So, water, heat it up. When it's finished, in about 2 hours, it comes out like if you're making cornbread, a slurry. And then we pump that into one of these 5 fermentation tanks, and we add distiller's yeast. Now that distiller's yeast comes from out of state as well. We went to BSU, we went to the Vandals, we went everywhere we could to get an Idaho strain, but they just don't make it. So we went outside for that. So when we add distiller's yeast to this, we're actually making a beer. It starts out as a beer. It's a sour, grainy beer. You can drink it after about 3 days. It gets a little grainy. So the microbrews would take that product and they would age it for their microbrews. We're a distillery, so what we do is we take that product, the beer, and we pump it over to the quarterback, our still, and we do a beer strip. And again, this happens Monday through Friday. And what happens with the beer strip, it extracts out the beer content and actually keeps the high octane alcohol. That's called low ones. Now, that's the original illegal moonshine that they do in the hills. That stuff is not good for you. Very high octane. It accumulates through here, and then our distillers come in on Saturdays, and they take the low wines, they redistill it, and what they do with their palates, because they take little shots off this parrot, and they put a little on the tip of their tongue, and it's about 160 to 180 proof at that point. Wow. And they know to get from heads, which is the real high stuff, to hearts, the money. And then when it gets a little charred, it's called tails. The hearts then gets pumped over into the hearts tank. This is the product that goes in the barrel. So that fills up to the yield we want that day, and then we turn around and we bring 2 empty barrels in, and we fill up the barrels. And then we put it back in there and we just let it sit. Recycle the water. We recycle about 1 million gallons a year, and it's the right thing to do. The city doesn't care. We care. And it's anything that goes in our drain gets pH balanced first, which is one of those 2 big tanks behind you. We spent close to $15,000 just on that pieces of equipment there because, well, 2 reasons. Number 1, we love getting audited because we come in like on the refrigerator A+. And number 2, we don't want to put things into the city of Boise where it's not right. And then we get the fermentation grains out of there, and then we give it to the farmers. Yeah, but we recycle, and that chiller back there is where we recycle it. And then we use it to chill the tanks, and we use it to clean.
Yeah, I was wondering what you used to do.
Yeah, we have something called SIP. It's clean in place. There's actually little barrels that string around the steel, and it cleans our tanks. So we try to use everything we can. So after we get an order, oh, you're fine. We bring the barrels back up. Then we pump it into the hearts tank again, and then we take Idaho purchase water out of Idaho City, again keeping it in Idaho, and we proof it down to what we want. So the bourbons you'll be tasting today will be 80 proof, and then the distiller exclusives are going to go all the way up to 124, but they're a non-bourbon. So then we proof it to where we want, and then we pump it into our bottling tank, and we assemble all the partners, 5 of us, and we sterilize and label right here. We bring bottles 4 at a time. To do here, we can do about 250 to 300 bottles an hour, depending on discussion and sampling. And we then take those barrels, we cork, I'm the corker, that's my job. Then we take modified hair dryers, heat shrink the plastic on the cork. We put them in a box right here. We bring a pallet over here, and the state usually gets 50 cases per pallet. That's kind of their standard. So we put 600 bottles here, bring it over there, shrink wrap it, and then they take it out the following week. So literally every bottle that goes to a bar, a restaurant, or to your home, we touch. So it's a true craft distillery. So right now we're in harvest mode, so what we won't produce until we get down to a certain number of barrels, because we don't want to overproduce, because it costs a lot of money to put stuff in a barrel and let it sit. We all met each other in Texas at a supper club, and we all worked together in a telecom company. And we like to smoke meats and pair it with different spirits or wine. We're foodies. And then our head distiller's wife was retiring, and he has Kentucky roots and Tennessee roots, so he was the bourbon influence. Right, and so he decided to start his business. We all jumped in, and now we're 5+ years into it. All of our products are not only through the process, but all of our products, including our moonshine, is through the barrels. Okay. So we age our moonshine anywhere between 5 and 9 months, and moonshine is typically Everclear in a mason jar and a mind eraser. We do the barrels because it's still 92 proof. It's still a moonshine, but the burn is gone. You get a tingle and a warming, like a nice sake finish, but you won't get the burn because of the barrel. There's certain laws about bourbon versus whiskey. Bourbon, the barrel has to, number one, has to be charred. Number two, that barrel can never be used again to call it bourbon. It's quite expensive to make. So we can use that bourbon barrel to make other products, we just can't call it bourbon. The other law is it can't come off the still any higher than 160 proof, and it has to have 51% corn in its mash. So it's regulated. Whiskeys, you can make whiskey out of anything. Now corn is usually predominant in there because it's cheap, and the starch is higher sugar content, and when you cook sugar, it becomes alcohol.